The crack of M4 carbine fire split the morning air at Naval Special Warfare Center, San Diego. 15 rounds, 15 targets, not a single miss. Master Chief Fletcher lowered the weapon, turned to face the SEAL trainees standing on the firing line, his voice carrying the weight of 28 years of service. That's how it's done, gentlemen. Precision, control, qualification. But his eyes stopped on someone who didn't belong there. Grace Thornton stood near the observation area, clipboard clutched in her hands, logistics uniform hanging loose on her small frame, hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, eyes watching with quiet attention, no expression crossing her face. Master Chief Fletcher's jaw tightened. He strode toward her, boots striking concrete with purpose, voice cutting through the lingering echo of gunfire. This range is for qualified shooters only. He stopped directly in front of her, towering a full head above, eyes looking down with unmistakable contempt. You're not qualified. 15 SEALs turned. 5 instructors paused mid-motion, the air suddenly thick with tension. Grace didn't look up, didn't respond, just stood there. Absolute silence. That made Master Chief Fletcher angrier. Logistics people shouldn't even be near operational training, he said louder, ensuring everyone heard. You want to watch warriors train? Go back to your supply closet. A few SEALs snickered. Petty Officer Mason Garrett, broad-shouldered, muscles bulging under his combat shirt, grinned wide. She probably thinks we're playing with toys, Chief. But Grace's fingers tightened imperceptibly around the clipboard, a micro-adjustment in her stance. Weight shifted ever so slightly to the balls of her feet. Shoulders relaxed but ready. Nobody noticed. Except Senior Instructor Arthur Walsh, former Delta Force, standing 20 feet away, his eyes narrowing just a fraction. And in the next 20 minutes, everything would change completely. Lieutenant Connor Hayes appeared from the range office, tablet in hand, scanning the assembled personnel with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd spent 12 years in Marine recon before crossing over to Naval Special Warfare instruction. His voice carried across the concrete. Master Chief, we've got a problem. JSOC level qualification demo scheduled for 1000 hours. Our designated shooter just went down with food poisoning. Fletcher turned, irritation flashing across his weathered features. How many do we need, sir? Just one for the demo, but it needs to be someone who can handle the stress course. Connor's eyes swept the range, landed briefly on Grace, then moved past her. Any volunteers from the SEAL candidates? Sir, they're mid-cycle. Can't pull them off training schedule. Fletcher's response was automatic, but his gaze had drifted back to Grace. A slow smile spread across his face, the kind that never reached his eyes. Although, we do have someone available for target holding duty. Connor followed Fletcher's line of sight. Master Chief, I don't think... Perfect solution, Lieutenant. Fletcher's voice carried that edge of authority that made questioning him difficult. Miss Thornton here was just expressing interest in range operations. Target holding is an excellent learning opportunity. Very hands-on. The way he emphasized those last 2 words made several SEALs chuckle. Grace's knuckles whitened on the clipboard, but her face remained blank. She didn't speak. It's a dangerous position, Chief, Connor said carefully. Requires focus and... I'm sure she can handle standing still and holding cardboard, sir. Unless logistics training is even less rigorous than I thought. Fletcher turned to Grace directly, voice dropping to a tone that somehow managed to be both conversational and cutting. You do know how to hold things, don't you? That is your job, after all, holding supplies. Mason Garrett couldn't contain himself. Careful, Chief. Those clipboards are heavy. Might need a spotter. More laughter rippled through the assembled SEALs. Lieutenant Bradley Carter, one of the senior instructors whose square jaw and recruiting poster good looks made him popular with trainees, joined in. Maybe we should start her with a pencil first, work her way up to cardboard. Grace set the clipboard down on a nearby equipment crate. The motion was precise, edges aligned perfectly at 90 degrees to the crate's corner, her hands steady. When she straightened, her posture had shifted somehow. Nothing dramatic, just a subtle change in how she held her weight. Arthur Walsh noticed. His eyes tracked every micro-adjustment. I'll do it, Grace said. First words she had spoken since arriving at the range that morning. Voice quiet but clear, no emotion coloring the 2 syllables. Fletcher's smile widened. Excellent, Lieutenant, problem solved. Miss Thornton volunteers for target holder duty. She gets to participate in real warrior training, and we get our demo completed. Everyone wins. Except Connor looked troubled. Grace, You don't have to. It's fine, sir. Grace walked toward the downrange target area, her gait smooth and measured. No hesitation in her steps. No fear in her body language. Outstanding initiative, Fletcher called after her, loud enough for everyone to hear. This is what supporting the warfighter looks like, gentlemen. Even our logistics personnel want to contribute. His tone made logistics personnel sound like an insult. The range went live 3 minutes later. Grace stood 40 feet downrange, holding a target board that would mark hits during the qualification sequence. Standard protocol called for the target holder to position themselves behind protective barriers, but Fletcher had directed her to stand in the open. Better visibility for the demo, he'd explained to Connor, though everyone knew the real reason. He wanted her uncomfortable, wanted her to feel the pressure of rounds impacting 6 feet away, wanted her to flinch, to crack, to prove his point about civilians who didn't belong near operational training. The first shooter took position. Grace held the target board steady, eyes forward, body completely still, as the SEAL candidate engaged his sequence. 5 rounds. 5 impacts. The sharp crack of each shot echoed across the range, but Grace didn't blink, didn't shift. Her stance remained unnaturally stable, weight distributed perfectly, core engaged, breathing controlled. Arthur Walsh leaned toward Connor. Lieutenant, that's not a normal stress response. Connor had been thinking the same thing. Maybe she's just really focused. Maybe. But Arthur's tone suggested he believed otherwise. The second shooter took position, then the third. After 20 minutes of continuous fire, Grace hadn't flinched once. Her arm showed no signs of fatigue despite holding the target board at shoulder height. Most civilians, most untrained personnel, would be shaking by now. The psychological pressure of high-velocity rounds impacting nearby, the physical strain of maintaining position, the mental exhaustion of sustained hypervigilance. Grace looked like she could do this all day. Master Chief Fletcher noticed. His satisfaction had slowly curdled into something else. Confusion, maybe, or the first stirrings of doubt. He called ceasefire, walked downrange, stopped 3 feet from Grace. You can put that down now. She lowered the target board smoothly, no tremor in her hands, no relief in her expression. Not what I expected, Fletcher admitted, voice pitched low enough that only Grace could hear. Most people struggle with their first time near live fire. Grace said nothing, just looked at him with those quiet, unreadable eyes. That silence made Fletcher's jaw tighten again. Well, let's see how you handle the next phase. He raised his voice, addressing Connor. Sir, requesting permission to run the full JSOC level qualification sequence. Since Miss Thornton is already downrange and clearly comfortable with the environment. Connor hesitated. Master Chief, that's, well, within my authority as Rangemaster, sir. And she did volunteer. Fletcher's eyes never left Grace's face, watching for any reaction. Fear, nervousness, anything. He got nothing. Your call, Grace, Connor said. You're not obligated to continue. I'll continue, sir. Grace's voice remained level. No bravado, no false confidence, just a simple statement of fact. Before we continue with what happens next at that firing range, I need you to do something important. Hit that subscribe button right now. This is the kind of story that will make you question everything you think you know about the people around you. The quiet ones, the overlooked ones, the ones society writes off without a second glance. Grace Thornton's journey from that moment of humiliation to what's coming next will shock you in ways you can't imagine. Subscribe, turn on notifications, because you'll want to see every story we bring you about warriors who don't advertise their battles. Don't miss what happens when Master Chief Fletcher realizes exactly who he's dealing with. The next sequence involved dynamic target presentation, boards appearing at random intervals and angles, while Grace stood center mass, requiring her to track multiple threat vectors simultaneously while remaining in the line of fire. It was designed to test a shooter's threat assessment and target prioritization skills. Using a logistics clerk as the target holder was borderline reckless. But Fletcher had made his decision, and Connor hadn't overruled him. Grace took position in the center lane, 6 target boards arranged in a semicircle around her firing position. 3 instructors operated the targets, raising and lowering them according to Fletcher's commands. The drill would run for 3 minutes, an eternity when you're standing between shooters and targets. Ready? Fletcher called out. Grace nodded once. The sequence began. Targets popped up left, right, center. Shooters engaged. Grace tracked every target with her eyes, but her body remained perfectly still. No flinching, no ducking, just calm awareness of everything happening around her. When targets appeared behind her, she knew without looking, some sixth sense or trained peripheral awareness letting her anticipate the firing sequence before rounds left the barrel. Halfway through the drill, a SEAL candidate's weapon experienced a malfunction, the distinctive sound of a failure to feed, the action cycling but no round chambering. Grace's hands twitched, her eyes snapped to the struggling shooter, tracking his fumbling attempt to clear the malfunction. For 3 seconds, she watched him work the problem incorrectly. Then her lips pressed together, and she looked away. But Sergeant Ethan Ross had seen her reaction. The weapons instructor's eyes narrowed behind his ballistic glasses, studying Grace with newfound interest. She'd identified the malfunction type and the incorrect clearance procedure in under 2 seconds. That kind of diagnostic speed came from experience, not reading a manual. The drill concluded. Grace lowered her arms, rolled her shoulders once, the only sign of physical strain she'd shown in 45 minutes of range operations. Fletcher walked downrange again, this time with Connor beside him. "Impressive," the Master Chief admitted grudgingly. "You've got some stress tolerance. I'll give you that." "Thank you, Master Chief." Grace's voice remained neutral. "But there's a difference between holding targets and understanding what's happening around you." Fletcher gestured toward the malfunction that had just occurred. "For example, that jam on lane 3. Do you know what type it was?" Grace hesitated, the first time she'd shown anything resembling uncertainty. "I'm not qualified to—" "Just answer the question." "Failure to feed." The magazine spring was weak, causing insufficient force on the bolt carrier. The shooter tried to tap rack bang, but that doesn't work for a weak magazine spring. He needed to swap magazines entirely. Absolute silence blanketed the range. Connor stared. Ethan Ross straightened from his lean against the equipment wall. Even Mason Garrett stopped his constant motion, frozen mid-stretch. Fletcher's expression cycled through surprise, calculation, and then hardened into something defensive. "Reading the manual doesn't make you qualified, Miss Thornton. Any armchair expert can memorize malfunction types." "Yes, Master Chief." Grace didn't argue, didn't defend herself, just accepted the dismissal. But Lieutenant Bradley Carter had joined the group, his handsome features arranged in skeptical curiosity. "Actually, Chief, that diagnosis was spot on. And most people can't identify weak magazine springs by sound alone. That requires pretty advanced knowledge." Fletcher shot Carter a look that clearly said not helping. "Fine. She reads good manuals, probably watches YouTube videos. Doesn't mean she belongs near operational training. Maybe we should test that theory," Ethan Ross called from his position. The weapons sergeant walked closer, challenge coin rolling across his knuckles, a nervous habit that revealed his interest in the developing situation. $20 says she can't name the parts of the M4 fire control group in under 10 seconds. Grace looked at Connor, silently asking permission. The lieutenant sighed. "It's your choice, Grace. Hammer, trigger, disconnector, selector, sear, auto sear, though that's only on select fire variants. Hammer spring, trigger spring, disconnector spring." She rattled off the list in 7 seconds flat, using technical terminology that only armorers and advanced weapons specialists employed. Ethan pocketed his challenge coin without comment, but his eyes had gone sharp with professional interest. That wasn't memorization. That was hands-on knowledge, the kind that came from field-stripping weapons in total darkness, from diagnosing malfunctions under combat stress, from living and breathing weapon systems until they became extensions of your body. Master Chief Fletcher's jaw worked silently. He'd backed himself into a corner, and the growing audience of SEALs and instructors sensed it. If he dismissed Grace now, he looked petty. If he continued testing her, he risked her demonstrating more competence. Either way, his authority had been questioned by the simple existence of a logistics clerk who knew more than she should. "Lucky guess," Mason Garrett offered from the sideline, trying to support his chief, but even his voice lacked conviction. "Was it luck when she identified the malfunction type and cause in under 2 seconds? Arthur Walsh had finally spoken up, his gravelly Delta Force drawl cutting through the tension. Or when she maintained proper stance under live fire for 45 minutes. Or when she demonstrated knowledge that most SEAL candidates don't acquire until late in training?" Fletcher rounded on Arthur. "Are you suggesting—" "I'm not suggesting anything, Master Chief. I'm observing." Arthur crossed his arms, his weathered face neutral but his eyes intent. "I'm observing someone who moves like they've been trained, someone who holds their body like they've been under fire before." Someone who knows weapons systems beyond what any logistics course teaches. Then where did she learn it? Fletcher demanded, directing the question at Grace. Who trained you? Grace looked at her boots. First time she'd broken eye contact since this whole situation began. I attended some additional courses during my service. Basic weapons familiarization, standard stuff. Standard stuff. Fletcher repeated the words slowly, tasting them for truth. Miss Thornton, I've been in this Navy for 28 years. I've trained thousands of sailors, and standard stuff doesn't produce the skills you just demonstrated. The rifle optic Grace had been observing earlier, a military-grade red dot sight, represented years of technological advancement in targeting systems. Modern combat optics combined durability with precision, using LED technology that could last 50,000 hours on a single battery. These sights maintained zero even under extreme recoil, with aspherical lens coatings that ensured clarity in all lighting conditions. Professional-grade optics weren't just for military use. Civilian marksmen, competitive shooters, and law enforcement relied on the same technology. The difference between hitting your target and missing could come down to having reliable equipment that performed when it matters most. Advanced targeting systems had become essential tools for anyone serious about precision shooting. Supply NCO Blake Mitchell appeared at the edge of the range, summoned by the unusual commotion. He took one look at Grace standing center range surrounded by instructors and immediately understood something had gone wrong. Chief Fletcher, is there a problem? Grace was supposed to be delivering the morning supply report, not standing down range. No problem, Blake. Fletcher's smile had teeth in it. Miss Thornton here volunteered to assist with qualification training. She's been very educational. Blake's eyes found Grace's face, reading something there that made his expression tighten with concern. They'd worked together for 18 months. He knew Grace kept to herself, did her job flawlessly, never caused trouble. Seeing her at the center of what looked like a confrontation made every protective instinct in the veteran supply NCO flare to life. Grace, you don't have to do this, Blake said quietly. Whatever this is, it's fine, Blake. Grace's voice remained calm, always calm, just helping out where needed. That's the spirit, Fletcher interjected, voice heavy with false encouragement. Miss Thornton understands the value of supporting the warfighter, even when it's uncomfortable. He turned to Connor. Sir, I'd like to continue evaluating Miss Thornton's claimed weapons knowledge. If she's attended these additional courses, she should be able to handle basic manipulation drills. Unless she'd prefer to return to supply duties now? The question hung in the air, not really a question at all, but a challenge wrapped in plausible deniability. Grace could walk away, should walk away. Every instinct Connor possessed told him this was escalating beyond reason, that Fletcher was nursing wounded pride and using Grace as a target for his frustration. But Grace didn't walk away. Set up your test, Master Chief. Her voice quiet as always, but something had shifted in her eyes. Some internal calculation made, some line drawn that Fletcher had unknowingly crossed. Fletcher's smile grew. Outstanding. Lieutenant, with your permission? Connor wanted to shut this down, wanted to order everyone back to their assigned duties and end this before it went further, but he'd seen what Arthur had seen. Grace moved wrong for a logistics clerk. Knew too much. Held herself with a discipline that suggested training far beyond basic qualification courses. And Connor had served long enough to know that when something didn't add up, finding answers was worth the risk. Permission granted, he said quietly. But, Master Chief, keep it reasonable. Always, sir. Fletcher gestured toward the weapons rack. Miss Thornton, let's start simple. Clear and safe that M4 carbine. Grace walked to the indicated weapon. Her approach was textbook. Proper angle, hands visible, no sudden movements. She picked up the rifle, pointed it downrange, dropped the magazine, locked the bolt to the rear, conducted a press check to verify an empty chamber, released the bolt forward on an empty chamber, conducted another visual and physical verification, then engaged the safety. The entire sequence took perhaps 8 seconds. Each movement flowed into the next with practiced efficiency. Good, Fletcher admitted. Now field strip it. Grace's hands moved. Bolt catch released. Charging handle removed. Bolt carrier group extracted. Upper receiver separated from lower. Buffer and buffer spring removed. Each component placed carefully on the mat in proper order. No fumbling, no hesitation. When she finished, she stepped back and waited. 38 seconds. Connor had timed it on his watch. SEAL standard was 45 seconds. JSOC standard was under 40. The SEALs had stopped pretending not to watch. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even Mason Garrett's earlier mockery had faded, replaced by focused attention and growing confusion. Logistics clerks didn't move like that, didn't handle weapons like extensions of their bodies, didn't demonstrate muscle memory that came from hundreds, maybe thousands, of repetitions under pressure. "Reassemble," Fletcher said. His voice had lost some of its edge, uncertainty creeping in around the margins. Grace rebuilt the rifle, faster this time, now that her hands remembered the weight and balance of this specific weapon. Buffer spring compressed and inserted. Upper and lower receivers mated. Bolt carrier group and charging handle reintroduced. Functions check performed. Safety, trigger, bolt movement. The entire sequence completed in 35 seconds. Sub-JSOC time. "Where did you learn that?" Ethan Ross asked, professional curiosity overriding any earlier skepticism. "That's not familiarization training. That's advanced weapons manipulation." Grace didn't answer immediately. Her eyes found Blake Mitchell's face, saw the concern there, the silent offer of support. Then she looked at Connor, at Arthur, at the assembled SEALs who had stopped training to watch this impossible situation unfold. "I attended some advanced courses," she said finally. "A few years ago, before I transferred to logistics." "What kind of courses?" Fletcher pressed. "What was your previous MOS?" "I'd rather not discuss my service record, Master Chief." Grace's tone remained respectful but firm. "It's not relevant to my current duties." "It's very relevant when you're demonstrating skills that raise questions about your background." Fletcher moved closer, using his height advantage to loom over her. "I'm the range master. This is my facility, and I don't like mysteries standing on my range demonstrating capabilities they shouldn't possess." The physical intimidation was obvious, deliberate. Fletcher testing to see if Grace would crack under direct pressure, if whatever discipline had carried her this far would break when confronted by raw authority. Grace held her ground, didn't step back, didn't look away, just met Fletcher's eyes with that same quiet, unreadable expression. "Chief Fletcher," Captain Raymond Pierce's voice cut across the range like a whip crack. The administrative officer had appeared from the range office, drawn by reports of an unusual situation developing during routine training. Pierce was career Navy, 30 years of service that had taught him to recognize trouble before it fully metastasized, and this situation had all the hallmarks of trouble brewing. "Is there a problem here?" Fletcher stepped back from Grace, automatically shifting to a position of attention. "No problem, sir. Just conducting some additional evaluation of support personnel capabilities." Pierce's eyes swept the assembled personnel, took in Grace's torn sleeve from the target-holding equipment, the sweat darkening her uniform despite the cool morning, the ring of instructors and SEALs surrounding her like spectators at a prize fight. "Miss Thornton, are you all right?" "Yes, sir." Grace's voice steady. "Just assisting with training requirements?" Pierce clearly didn't believe that simple explanation, but pushing the issue without understanding the full context would create more problems than it solved. "Master Chief, perhaps Miss Thornton should return to her assigned duties. Supply has deadlines that don't stop for range operations." It was an out. A clean way to end this before it escalated further. Fletcher should have taken it, but wounded pride made people stupid. "Sir, with respect, Miss Thornton volunteered to participate in evaluation drills. We've established that she possesses weapons handling skills beyond standard qualification. I believe it's appropriate to document those capabilities for her personnel file. Wouldn't want any questions later about what training she's received." The implication was clear. If Grace walked away now, Fletcher would ensure her mysterious skills became official questions. Questions that could lead to investigations, to scrutiny of her service record, to the kind of attention that could make a quiet logistics job very uncomfortable. Captain Pierce heard the threat. So did Connor. So did Grace. Blake Mitchell stepped forward, voice tight with barely controlled anger. "Chief, Grace has been nothing but professional in every aspect of her duties. She doesn't deserve—" "It's okay, Blake." Grace's hand rose slightly, a small gesture that somehow carried enough authority to stop Blake mid-sentence. She turned to Fletcher, and for just a moment something flickered across her face. Not fear, not anger, something colder, something calculating. "Set up your evaluation drills, Master Chief. Let's document my capabilities for the record." Fletcher smiled. Victory tasted sweet, even when you knew it might be temporary. "Excellent. Lieutenant Connor, if you'll oversee the official documentation—" Connor nodded reluctantly. What did you have in mind, Chief? Let's start with basic marksmanship. If Miss Thornton is going to claim advanced weapons training, she should be able to demonstrate actual shooting skills, not just field stripping and malfunction diagnosis. They moved to the firing line. Grace accepted an M4 carbine and 3 magazines loaded with 30 rounds each. Standard qualification course. Engage targets at various ranges, different shooting positions, time limits for each evolution. Most sailors took weeks of training to pass this course. Some never did. Fletcher called the range hot. Grace loaded her first magazine, conducted functions check, took proper stance, and waited for the first target sequence. 5 rounds, standing unsupported, 25 meters, on my mark. Fletcher held the timer. Target up in 3, 2, 1, mark. The first target popped up. Grace's rifle came up smooth, sight picture acquired, trigger pressed. 5 shots in rapid succession, controlled pairs +1, all center mass. The target dropped. Total elapsed time, 2.8 seconds. Silence from the assembled observers. That was fast. Competition level fast, but maybe luck. Again, Fletcher ordered. Same target, same drill. Grace reloaded. The drill repeated. This time 2.6 seconds. All hits still center mass, grouping tight enough to cover with a fist. Not luck. Mason Garrett's earlier confidence had evaporated. He glanced at Bradley Carter, saw his own confusion reflected back. Something was very wrong with this picture. Logistics clerks didn't shoot like this. Nobody shot like this without serious training. Mozambique drill, Fletcher announced, voice hard. 2 body, 1 head, 3 seconds max. Target up. Grace executed. Bang, bang, bang. 2 center mass, 1 between the eyes. Time, 2.4 seconds. Failure drill, 4 seconds, moving target. Grace shifted stance, tracked the moving board, engaged with smooth precision. The mechanical sound of metal on paper punctuated each hit. Ethan Ross leaned toward Arthur Walsh. That's not SEAL-level shooting. That's something else. Arthur nodded slowly. He'd served with enough Tier 1 operators to recognize their shooting signature. The effortless precision, the economy of movement, the way they made impossible shots look routine. Grace demonstrated all those markers, but what unit trained logistics personnel to that standard? None, which meant Grace wasn't really logistics personnel, or hadn't always been. Fletcher ran her through every drill in the qualification course. Standing, kneeling, prone. Static targets, moving targets, multiple targets. Weak hand shooting, strong hand shooting, transitional drills from rifle to pistol. Every evolution she executed flawlessly, her accuracy never wavering, her speed consistently substandard times. After 20 minutes, Fletcher called ceasefire. Grace saved her weapon, removed the magazine, locked the bolt back, conducted clearance procedures. Her breathing barely elevated despite the sustained physical and mental exertion. "Where did you really learn to shoot?" Connor asked quietly. The question everyone wanted answered. Grace looked at the targets downrange, at the tight groupings that told a story her words wouldn't. "I told you, additional courses. Advanced training opportunities that came up during my service." "What unit?" Arthur pressed. "What command offers that level of marksmanship training to logistics personnel?" "It's in my service record, senior instructor." Grace's tone respectful but final. "If you have appropriate clearances, you can review it. Otherwise, I'd prefer not to discuss my previous assignments." The word clearances hung heavy in the air. Why would a logistics clerk's service record require clearances to review? Fletcher's frustration had metastasized into something darker. He'd tried to humiliate Grace, to put her in her place, to prove that support personnel didn't belong near warrior training. Instead, she'd demonstrated capabilities that made a mockery of his assumptions, made him look foolish in front of his men. And now she was hiding behind classified service records? "You're hiding something," he said flatly. "Nobody shoots like that by accident. Nobody handles weapons with your level of proficiency without serious operational background. And logistics personnel don't have operational backgrounds that require classification." "Master Chief," Connor started to intervene, but Captain Pierce cut him off. "This has gone far enough. Miss Thornton has clearly demonstrated competence beyond her current role. That information will be noted in her file. Now, I suggest we all return to our assigned duties before this situation generates the kind of attention nobody wants." It was a direct order, barely disguised as suggestion. Fletcher had no choice but to comply. "Yes, sir. Range operations concluded. All personnel clear the line. The SEALs dispersed reluctantly, talking among themselves in low voices. The instructors moved slower, lingering at the edges of the range, curiosity not yet satisfied. Blake Mitchell approached Grace, concern written across his features. "You okay?" "Fine." Grace handed her rifle to the Armory NCO, signed the weapons log, collected her clipboard from where she'd left it hours ago. Just another day supporting the warfighter. The dry humor in her tone made Blake smile despite his worry. "Grace, what you just did, people are going to have questions." "Let them question." Grace started walking toward the range exit. "I'm going back to supply. We've got inventory reports due by 1400 hours. She left without looking back. Left behind a range full of confused warriors and one Master Chief whose wounded pride had just become something more dangerous. Curiosity mixed with determination. Fletcher watched her go, jaw working silently. "I'm going to find out who she really is," he said quietly. Arthur Walsh heard him and felt a chill of premonition. Because Arthur had served long enough to recognize when someone was carrying secrets that powerful people wanted kept secret, and Grace Thornton was carrying something heavy. Are you still watching? Good, because this is where it gets intense. If you're loving this story of Grace proving herself against impossible odds, smash that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear. That quiet strength is real strength. The reveal coming up will make your jaw drop. Trust me, you don't want to miss a single second of what happens next. But Master Chief Fletcher wasn't done. That much became clear over the following 90 minutes as training continued, and Grace's demonstration circulated through the base gossip network like wildfire. The quiet logistics clerk who'd shot like a special operations instructor, the support personnel who'd field-stripped an M4 faster than most SEALs, the woman who stood under live fire without flinching and diagnosed weapon malfunctions by sound alone. Fletcher's earlier humiliation had transformed into obsessive need to understand. He pulled Grace's service record, only to find large portions redacted under classifications he didn't have access to review. He contacted her previous commands, received polite but firm responses that her assignments were not available for discussion. He even tried calling the personnel office. They referred him back to Grace's commanding officer, who happened to be Captain Pierce. Every door slammed shut, every avenue blocked. The tighter the security around Grace's background, the more determined Fletcher became to expose whatever truth she was hiding. By 1300 hours, when Grace returned to the range with supply delivery paperwork that required Fletcher's signature, he was ready. "Miss Thornton." "Good timing." Fletcher gestured toward the kill house, a specially constructed building designed for close-quarters battle training, currently being prepared for afternoon SEAL candidate evaluations. "I need someone to walk through the course before we run candidates. Safety check. Make sure all the target mechanisms are functioning properly." Grace looked at the structure, at Fletcher's too casual tone, at Connor's troubled expression. She understood immediately. This wasn't about safety checks. This was Fletcher's next test. "I don't think," Connor began. "It's a reasonable request, Lieutenant," Fletcher interrupted smoothly. "Support personnel conduct safety inspections all the time. Unless Miss Thornton feels uncomfortable entering the kill house, the implication clear. If she refused, it would suggest fear or inadequacy. Blake Mitchell had accompanied Grace for the delivery run. He stepped forward now, voice tight. "Chief, Grace has duties that don't include playing target dummy in your training scenarios. I'm not asking her to play anything. Just walk through, verify the targets are positioned correctly, check that door mechanisms work properly. 15 minutes tops." Fletcher's smile was all teeth. "Unless there's some reason she shouldn't go into the kill house?" Grace met Blake's eyes, saw the concern there, the silent plea to refuse this increasingly bizarre testing regimen. Then she looked at Connor, who clearly wanted to shut this down, but couldn't find justification that wouldn't make him look like he was giving Grace special treatment based on gender or physical size. The trap was elegant. Refuse and accept the implication of weakness. Agree and enter a situation Fletcher controlled completely. "I'll do the inspection," Grace said quietly. "If Lieutenant Connor approves." Connor hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. 15 minutes, safety check only. "Chief Fletcher, you'll monitor from the observation room with me." "Of course, sir." Fletcher's satisfaction was palpable. They entered the control room overlooking the kill house interior, a warren of rooms and corridors designed to simulate enemy strongholds. terrorist safe houses, hostage scenarios. Cameras covered every angle. Target systems could pop up anywhere. Lighting could shift from bright to pitch black in seconds. Sound effects ranged from crying babies to gunfire. It was designed to be disorienting, overwhelming, stressful. Grace entered through the front door, clipboard in hand, moving with that same measured precision she'd demonstrated all morning. The first room was clear, just empty space and 3 static targets. She checked each one, verified their mounting hardware, made notes on her checklist. "Boring so far," Mason Garrett muttered from behind Connor. He'd joined the observation group, along with Bradley Carter, Ethan Ross, and half a dozen curious SEALs who had heard about the morning's events. "Give it time," Fletcher said softly. His hand rested on the master control panel for the kill house systems. "Let's see how she handles a little stress." Connor's warning bells went off. "Chief, what are you—" Fletcher pressed a button. The lights in the kill house dropped to near darkness. Another button activated the sound system. The sharp crack of simulated gunfire, overlapping voices shouting in multiple languages, the wail of sirens. Grace stopped mid-step, didn't panic, didn't cry out, just froze, head tilted slightly, processing the sudden chaos. "Master Chief, that's excessive," Connor protested. "She's doing a safety inspection, not running the course." "Just simulating realistic conditions, sir. If our support personnel are going to work around combat training facilities, they should understand what combat feels like." Fletcher pressed another button. Targets began popping up throughout the kill house. 6 simultaneous threats at impossible angles. In the darkness and noise, Grace moved, but not how Fletcher expected, not scrambling for the door or cowering against walls. She flowed through the space with liquid efficiency, her body naturally falling into tactical movement patterns, pieing corners, maintaining cover, checking blind spots. Even without a weapon, her hands moved through motions that anyone with combat training would recognize. Breach mechanics, room clearing sequences, threat assessment protocols. Arthur Walsh's breath caught. "Connor, that's not possible. She's running the course. She's running it correctly." "What?" Connor's attention snapped from arguing with Fletcher to watching Grace's movement on the monitors. "Watch her entry angles. Watch how she moves through fatal funnels. That's CQB training, advanced CQB training." Arthur's voice carried an edge of disbelief. "Nobody moves like that by accident." Grace reached the second room. More targets appeared. Fletcher deliberately activating systems faster than normal course protocol. She processed each threat, her body positioning itself for optimal engagement angles even though she carried no weapon. When a target popped up directly behind her, she spun, dropped to one knee, hands coming up in perfect two-handed grip on an imaginary pistol. Sight picture, aligned, trigger press simulated. Then she caught herself, froze mid-motion, straightened slowly, arms dropping to her sides. For just a moment, her expression cracked, showing something raw beneath the calm exterior. Exhaustion, maybe, or resignation. "Did you see that?" Ethan Ross breathed. That transition was textbook. That was operator-level movement. Fletcher had seen it too. His satisfaction was fading, replaced by something harder to name. He'd wanted to expose Grace's inadequacy. Instead, he was exposing her competence. And that competence raised questions he wasn't sure he wanted answered. "Shut it down," Connor ordered. "Kill the simulation. Now." "Sir, she's almost through." "That's an order, Master Chief." Fletcher complied, though his jaw clenched with frustration. Lights came back up, sound effects cut off. Targets retracted. Grace stood in the center of the final room, breathing slightly harder now, clipboard forgotten on the floor behind her. When she looked up at the camera, her eyes found Connor's face through the one-way glass. Found it with the accuracy of someone who knew exactly where the observation window was located. Knew because she'd stood in observation rooms before, many times before. The door opened, and she exited the kill house, walking with careful control back toward the control room entrance. When she stepped inside, every person present was staring at her. "That wasn't a safety inspection," Grace said flatly. First real emotion she'd shown all day. Anger, tightly leashed but unmistakable. "That was a test. You passed," Arthur said quietly. "Passed better than most SEAL candidates pass on their 5th attempt." "I don't know what you're talking about, senior instructor." Grace's walls went back up, expression smoothing to that familiar blank calm. "I just tried to complete the inspection in difficult conditions." "You ran CQB protocols," Connor said. "Advanced protocols. Where did you learn that?" "I didn't learn anything, sir. I was just trying not to panic in the dark. But her voice lacked conviction, the lie transparent. Instructor Logan Davis had been watching from the back of the observation room, tablet in hand, quietly running searches through personnel databases while everyone else focused on Grace's performance. Now he spoke up, voice tight with surprise. "Lieutenant, you need to see this." Connor crossed to Davis, looked at the tablet screen. His expression shifted, surprise, then shock, then something approaching alarm. "Where did you find this?" Cross-referenced her service number with JSOC personnel databases. "Most of her file is redacted, but there's a flag here," Davis pointed. "It says inquiries about her background need to be referred to JSOC Special Operations Command, with a classification level I've never seen before." The room went very quiet. JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command, the unified command structure that oversaw the military's most elite units. SEALs answered to JSOC, so did Delta Force, Army Rangers, Air Force Special Tactics, but there were other units under JSOC authority. Smaller units, more classified units. Units that didn't advertise their existence. "Let me see that," Fletcher demanded, crossing to take the tablet from Davis. He read, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and finally, reluctant understanding. "This can't be right." "What can't be right?" Mason Garrett asked. Fletcher looked at Grace, really looked at her, for the first time since this morning's confrontation began, saw past the loose logistics uniform and the quiet demeanor, saw the controlled precision in every movement, the tactical awareness that never shut off, the knowledge that went far beyond any training course available to support personnel. "Grace Thornton," he said slowly. "That's not your real name, is it?" "It's the name on my current assignment orders, Master Chief." Grace's response was technically accurate while avoiding the actual question. "Your file says this is a cover assignment, medical leave status. Voluntary transfer to non-operational duties pending psychological evaluation, clearance for return to active status." Fletcher's voice had lost its edge, confusion replacing certainty. "What unit were you with?" Grace said nothing, just stood there, that quiet, unreadable mask firmly in place. "The activity," Arthur Walsh said suddenly. Everyone turned to stare at him. He was looking at Grace with something like awe mixed with concern. "That's what the classification flags mean. The redacted service record, the JSOC referrals. You were with the activity." Grace's expression didn't change, didn't confirm or deny, but something flickered in her eyes, recognition maybe, or relief that someone finally understood. "What's the activity?" Liam Foster, one of the younger SEAL trainees, asked from the doorway where he had been watching with growing confusion. "Intelligence support activity," Arthur explained. "ISA, one of JSOC's most classified units. They conduct advanced recon, target assessment, deep cover operations in hostile territory. They don't exist on paper. They don't recruit. They select from other special operations units after years of exemplary performance. And they never, ever talk about what they do." He looked at Grace with new understanding. "That's why you wouldn't discuss your background. Not because you were being secretive, because you were legally prohibited from discussing it, because the missions you ran are still classified at levels most of us will never have clearance to access." Military personnel transitioning to civilian life faced unique financial challenges. Specialized insurance policies for veterans accounted for combat-related injuries, PTSD treatment coverage, and service-connected disabilities. Financial advisors with security clearances could help former special operations personnel manage classified pensions and navigate complex veteran benefits. Investment portfolios designed for military retirees often included government securities, defense sector stocks, and real estate near major bases. Life insurance policies for former operators accounted for high-risk backgrounds, offering coverage that standard policies wouldn't provide. Smart financial planning during active duty could set the foundation for stable retirement, especially for those who served in classified units with unique benefit structures. The silence in the observation room was profound. Even Mason Garrett, who had mocked Grace mercilessly just hours ago, had gone pale. ISA operators were legendary within the special operations community. Whispered about but rarely confirmed, they operated at levels above the already elite SEAL teams and Delta Force operators. They were ghosts, shadows, warriors who won battles before anyone else knew those battles were being fought, and Grace Thornton had been one of them. "How long?" Connor asked quietly. "How long were you with the activity?" Grace looked at him as for a long moment, weighing her response. Finally, she said, 7 deployments, 12 years total service, last 7 with ISAE, voluntarily transferred to medical leave status 18 months ago, accepted logistics assignment to stay close to operational environment without operational responsibilities. Why? Fletcher's voice had lost all its earlier aggression, replaced by genuine confusion. Why hide? Why let me... He cut himself off, unable to articulate the depths of his mistake. Because I don't want to be that person anymore, Master Chief. Grace's voice was soft but steady. I don't want people saluting me or asking about missions I can't discuss or treating me like I'm somehow special because of what I used to do. I wanted to be normal, quiet, just another support person doing her job and going home at the end of the day. But you're not just another support person, Bradley Carter said. You're one of the most elite operators in the entire U.S. military. Was, Grace corrected firmly. Past tense, I'm not an operator anymore. I'm logistics. That's what I chose. That's who I am now. Blake Mitchell had been quiet throughout the revelations, processing this new understanding of the woman he'd worked beside for 18 months. Now he spoke, voice gentle. Grace, why didn't you tell me? For the same reason I didn't tell anyone. Grace looked at her friend and supervisor with quiet regret. Because the moment people know what you used to be, they stop seeing who you are now. They start treating you different, making assumptions, having expectations. She turned to face Fletcher directly. Or they start testing you, pushing you, trying to prove you're not as capable as your reputation suggests. The accusation hung heavy. Fletcher had no defense. He'd done exactly what Grace described, pushed her, tested her, tried to humiliate her, based purely on his assumptions about who she was and what she could do. And in doing so, he'd forced her to reveal exactly what she'd spent 18 months trying to hide. I owe you an apology, Fletcher said quietly. The words clearly difficult, but genuine. Multiple apologies. For my behavior this morning, for my treatment of you, for putting you in positions that forced you to break your cover. It wasn't cover, Master Chief. Grace's tone held no anger, just tired resignation. It was my life, the one I chose after I decided I couldn't do that job anymore, after I lost people, after I came home from missions that changed who I was. She picked up her clipboard from where it rested against the wall. And now everyone knows, and my quiet life here is over. So, congratulations. You got your answers. She walked out before anyone could respond, leaving behind a room full of chastened instructors and stunned SEALs who were beginning to understand exactly how badly they'd misjudged the quiet woman in the logistics uniform. Hold on. We're about to reach the moment you've been waiting for. Grace's secret is about to explode into the open in a way that will leave everyone speechless. Before that happens, comment below. Have you ever been underestimated because of how you look? Drop your story. This community needs to hear it. Now let's see what Grace has been hiding for 18 months. Connor found Grace 20 minutes later in the supply warehouse, methodically counting inventory as though nothing extraordinary had happened. Her movements were precise, mechanical, checking serial numbers against manifest lists with single-minded focus that suggested she was using the routine task as armor against everything that had just unraveled. Grace, Connor's voice was gentle, can we talk? She didn't look up from the equipment crate she was inspecting. About what, Lieutenant? My work performance has been satisfactory. No complaints on file. All deadlines met. That's not what this is about. Then what is it about, sir? Grace set down her clipboard, finally meeting his eyes. About how I demonstrated capabilities inconsistent with my current role. About how I've been living under a technically accurate but deliberately misleading presentation of my background. About how Master Chief Fletcher spent 6 hours trying to humiliate me until he accidentally exposed classified information. About whether you're okay. Connor's response was simple, direct. About what we can do to help you maintain the life you were trying to build here. Grace's expression softened slightly. Sir, with respect, that life is gone now. By tomorrow morning, everyone on this base will know about my ISAE background. By next week, it'll be all over Naval Special Warfare Command. The quiet logistics clerk who turned out to be an activity operator, that's too good a story not to spread. So, what do you want to do? My job, sir. Continue doing what I was assigned to do. Count supplies, file reports, support the mission from the rear. Grace's voice was steady, but Connor heard the exhaustion beneath it. Unless Master Chief Fletcher wants to continue his evaluation process, Fletcher's done testing you. I made that clear. Connor leaned against a storage rack, studying Grace's face. But I need to understand something. The Kill House performance, you weren't just running those rooms. You were teaching, showing us exactly what level you operated at. Why? Grace was quiet for a long moment, organizing her thoughts. Because Fletcher wasn't going to stop until he got his answers. He'd made me a problem that needed solving, and problems don't go away when you ignore them. So I gave him his answers. Showed him enough that he'd understand what he was dealing with and back off. Calculated escalation. Controlled revelation, Grace corrected. There's a difference. I showed tactical movement, weapons knowledge, stress management. But I didn't show him why. I didn't discuss missions or operations or the things that actually matter. I gave him the surface, enough to satisfy curiosity without exposing anything truly classified. Connor nodded slowly. But now the questions are going to get deeper. People are going to want to know what you did, where you deployed, what operations you ran. And I'll tell them the same thing I told Fletcher. It's classified. I'm legally prohibited from discussing operational details. Anyone with appropriate clearances can review my service record. Everyone else gets to wonder. Grace picked up her clipboard again. That's how the activity works, sir. We're transparent about our existence, but opaque about our actions. It's enough for most people. What about the people it's not enough for? Grace's smile was brief and without humor. Then I remind them that some questions don't have answers they're cleared to hear. And if they keep pushing, I file harassment complaints until they stop. Before Connor could respond, voices echoed from the warehouse entrance. Arthur Walsh entered first, followed by Ethan Ross and several other instructors. Behind them came the person Connor hadn't expected, Lieutenant Commander Jack Sterling, the SEAL team leader who oversaw all West Coast training operations. Grace straightened, unconsciously shifting to a more formal posture. Sterling's presence meant this situation had escalated beyond range-level drama into something involving command authority. "Miss Thornton," Sterling said, his voice carrying that peculiar quality senior officers developed, able to convey both respect and authority simultaneously. "I've been hearing interesting reports about this morning's activities." "Sir." Grace didn't elaborate, waiting to see what Sterling knew and what he wanted. "Commander," Connor stepped forward. "If I could brief you privately—" "That won't be necessary, Lieutenant. Master Chief Fletcher has already provided a comprehensive report, including his own acknowledgement that his conduct was inappropriate." Sterling's eyes never left Grace's face. "What I need now is to understand exactly who we have working in our supply department, because the person Fletcher described doesn't match any logistics clerk I've ever met." "Sir, my personnel file is classified 6 ways from Sunday. Yes, I know. I've read the unclassified portions. They tell me you transferred here 18 months ago on medical leave status. Voluntary assignment to non-operational duties. Previous service with Joint Special Operations Command in a role requiring TS/SCI clearances with compartmented access." Sterling crossed his arms. "What they don't tell me is why someone with your operational background is counting bullets instead of using them." Grace held Sterling's gaze. "Because I chose this assignment, Commander. Because after 12 years of operations, I needed something different, something quieter, something that didn't require me to make life and death decisions every 72 hours. PTSD? Among other things, sir." Grace didn't flinch from the question. "Survivor's guilt, moral injury, the usual constellation of problems that come from doing that job for too long." Sterling nodded, his expression softening slightly. "I served with some activity operators in Iraq, 2007. Couldn't tell you their real names, probably weren't using them anyway, but I saw what they did, saw what it cost them." He paused. "You're not the first to walk away from that life, Miss Thornton. Won't be the last." "Thank you for understanding, sir. I understand. But I also have a problem now." Sterling gestured toward the assembled instructors. "Word's spreading about your performance today. SEALs talk, instructors talk. By sunset, every warrior on this base is going to know there's a former activity operator working logistics. Some will respect it, some will want to test you like Fletcher did, and some will have questions they won't stop asking." Grace's shoulders sagged slightly, the first visible sign of defeat she'd shown all day. "So, you're reassigning me?" "I didn't say that." Sterling's response was firm. What I'm saying is your cover, and yes, I know you'll protest it was just a job and not a cover, but let's be honest about what it was. Your cover is blown. You can't go back to being invisible. So the question becomes, what do you want your new normal to look like? The warehouse fell silent, everyone waiting for Grace's answer. She looked at Blake Mitchell, who'd followed the command group and now stood near the entrance, concern written across his features. Looked at Connor, who'd tried to protect her, even when he didn't fully understand what he was protecting. Looked at Arthur Walsh, whose recognition had started this whole cascade. I want to do my job, Grace said finally. Count supplies, file reports, support the mission. If people know my background, fine. If they have questions I can't answer, they'll learn to live with disappointment. But I don't want special treatment. I don't want to become the base curiosity. I just want to be left alone to do the work I chose. Sterling considered that for a long moment. All right, you keep your logistics assignment, but I'm adding a special duty. Consultant on advanced tactical training. Voluntary basis, compensated appropriately, no operational responsibilities. You'd help design courses, review training protocols, maybe run occasional demonstrations for senior candidates. Nothing that requires you to pick up a weapon unless you choose to. Sir, I'm not an instructor. You were today, and you were effective. Sterling's tone brooked no argument. Grace, I'm trying to find a middle ground here. Give you purpose beyond inventory management while respecting your need for distance from operations. And give this command access to your experience without forcing you back into active status. He paused. Unless you'd prefer I just let the gossip mill run wild and deal with endless curiosity seekers on your own. Grace understood the choice being offered. Accept a formal consulting role and gain institutional protection, or refuse and face constant informal testing from warriors who wanted to prove themselves against her reputation. I'll consider it, sir. Not agreement, but not refusal either. That's all I ask. Sterling turned to address the group. For everyone else, Miss Thornton's background is now known. It's also now officially off limits for casual discussion. Anyone who harasses her, tests her without authorization, or spreads classified information about her service record will answer to me personally. Clear? A chorus of "yes, sir" echoed through the warehouse. Sterling nodded, satisfied. Good. Now everyone except Lieutenant Connor and Miss Thornton, dismissed. You all have duties that don't involve standing around my supply warehouse. The group dispersed slowly, instructors filing out with backward glances and whispered conversations. Arthur Walsh paused at the door, caught Grace's eye, and nodded once, a gesture of respect between warriors. Then he was gone, and only Connor, Sterling, and Grace remained. Sir, Grace said quietly, about Master Chief Fletcher, already handled. Fletcher's getting counseling on appropriate conduct towards support personnel. He's also writing a formal letter documenting his mistakes and the lessons learned, not as punishment, as education, for him and anyone else who thinks testing someone without their consent is acceptable behavior. Sterling's expression hardened. What he did to you today was wrong. The fact that you proved capable doesn't make it right. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet, because there's one more thing we need to discuss. Sterling pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and turned it to show Grace an image. This came through JSOC channels 20 minutes ago, flagged with your personnel number. Grace looked at the screen. Her face went very still. Connor couldn't see the image, but he could see Grace's reaction, recognition mixed with something that might have been dread. They're asking for you, Sterling said quietly. Encrypted requests through ISA channels. No details, just a priority code and authentication requirements. They want you to call back on secure line. No. Grace's response was immediate and absolute. Sir, I'm on medical leave. I'm not cleared for operational duties. Tell them to find someone else. Grace, Commander, I can't. Grace's voice cracked slightly, the first real emotional break Connor had witnessed. I left for a reason. I left because I couldn't do that job anymore, because the last mission went wrong and people died and I can't. She stopped, visibly gathering herself. Tell them no. Sterling pocketed his phone. I'm not going to tell you what to do, Grace. This is your choice. But that call is going to keep coming. ISA doesn't give up easily when they need someone. Let them not give up. Let them call every day. My answer won't change. Grace's hands were shaking now, the first visible sign of the stress she'd been containing all day finally breaking through. I'm done being that person. Done making those calls. Done carrying those weights. Connor stepped forward. Grace, you should sit down. I'm fine. You're not fine. Sit down before you fall down. Connor's tone was gentle but firm, guiding Grace to a supply crate that could serve as makeshift seating. She sank onto it, head bowing forward, breathing deeply. Sterling and Connor exchanged glances, the unspoken question passing between them. How much had today's confrontation cost her? How close to breaking was she? I'll handle the ISA inquiry, Sterling said quietly. Tell them you are unavailable for recall. If they push, I'll push back harder. You've earned the right to say no, Grace. She didn't look up, just nodded once. Connor could see her shoulders shaking slightly, not crying, but the physical manifestation of adrenaline finally crashing after hours of sustained stress. Sterling departed, leaving Connor alone with Grace in the quiet warehouse. He let the silence stretch, giving her time to gather herself. After several minutes, she straightened, wiping her eyes quickly. Sorry, sir. That was unprofessional. That was human, Connor corrected. Grace, you held it together through 6 hours of testing, humiliation, forced revelation, and command scrutiny. You're allowed to have a reaction. ISA operators don't have reactions. We have controlled responses to stimuli. You're not an ISA operator anymore. You're a person, and people have feelings. Connor sat on a crate across from her. What happened on your last mission? You said people died. Grace was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was distant, lost in memory. Infiltration operation, foreign territory, can't say where, 3-person team, me and 2 others. We were gathering intelligence on a target network, supposed to be low risk, just surveillance and documentation. But someone betrayed us, someone sold our location, and when the team came for us... She stopped, swallowing hard. I got out. They didn't. Hannah and... She cut herself off. 2 teammates, KIA, 18 months ago. And you blame yourself. I was team leader. Their lives were my responsibility. I made the call to stay in position instead of exfiltrating when we had the chance. I thought we had more time. Thought the intelligence was worth the risk. Grace's hands clenched into fists. I was wrong, and they paid for my mistake with their lives. Connor understood now. Understood why Grace had walked away from the activity. Why she'd chosen logistics work in a training environment where she could be near warriors without being one. Why she'd built such careful walls around herself. You're punishing yourself, he said quietly, denying yourself operational work as penance for their deaths. I'm choosing a different path, Grace corrected. One where my mistakes don't get people killed. Grace, you know that's not... The warehouse door burst open. Ethan Ross rushed in, breathless. Lieutenant, you need to come back to the range, now. Fletcher's calling everyone in for an emergency demonstration. Connor stood. What kind of demonstration? He won't say. Just ordered all instructors and available SEAL candidates to the kill house in 15 minutes. Said it's mandatory training on... Ethan paused, looking uncomfortable. On proper respect for all personnel regardless of background. Grace's head snapped up. He's doing what? I think he's trying to make it right, Ethan said. The way Fletcher does things. Big, public, impossible to ignore. Connor looked at Grace. You don't have to attend. Yes, I do. Grace stood, squaring her shoulders. If Fletcher's about to make a spectacle, I need to be there to control the damage. They arrived at the kill house to find nearly 50 people assembled. Every instructor, every SEAL candidate currently on site, plus various support personnel who had heard something was happening and come to witness. Master Chief Fletcher stood in front of the building, full combat gear, M4 carbine slung across his chest. When he saw Grace arrive, he called the group to attention. Listen up. Today I made serious errors in judgment. I treated a fellow service member with disrespect, based on assumptions about her capabilities and value. I tested her without her consent, pushed her into situations designed to humiliate, and forced her to reveal aspects of her background she had every right to keep private. The assembled personnel shifted uncomfortably. Public self-criticism from a Master Chief was almost unheard of. Grace Thornton is a former Intelligence Support Activity Case Officer. 7 deployments in direct support of this nation's most critical operations. The activity doesn't recruit, they select. They don't advertise. They operate in shadows we'll never see. Miss Thornton earned her place in that unit through years of exemplary service, and I treated her like she was worth less than the concrete under our boots. Fletcher turned to face Grace directly. Ma'am, there's no apology adequate for what I did today, but I'm going to try anyway. He came to full attention, shoulders back, spine straight. Then he saluted, formal, precise, held for the regulation 3 seconds before dropping. A Master Chief saluting an enlisted logistics clerk. The symbolism was impossible to miss. Grace returned the salute automatically, muscle memory from years of service taking over. When she lowered her hand, her expression was carefully neutral, but Connor saw moisture glistening at the corners of her eyes. Furthermore, Fletcher continued, addressing the group again, I'm implementing new protocols for this training facility. No more assumptions about capability based on current role. No more testing without explicit consent. No more using rank or position to intimidate personnel into proving themselves. We're supposed to be warriors. That means fighting our enemies, not each other. Mason Garrett stepped forward from the SEAL candidate formation. His earlier confidence had been replaced by something humbler. Chief, I'd like to add something. He turned to Grace. Ma'am, I mocked you this morning, made jokes about your size, your role, your competence. I based those judgments on appearance instead of character. I was wrong. I'm sorry. Lieutenant Bradley Carter joined him. I contributed to that environment, led others in dismissing you. That was wrong. You have my apology as well. One by one, others stepped forward. SEALs who had laughed, instructors who had watched without intervening, even Captain Raymond Pierce, who'd tried to shut down the situation but hadn't protected Grace from the initial confrontation. Grace stood silent through it all, accepting each apology with a quiet nod but no words. Connor could see the toll this public spectacle was taking. Every apology another reminder of this morning's humiliation, every acknowledgement another brick removed from the walls she'd built around her former life. Finally, Arthur Walsh spoke. Grace, I recognized what you were early on. Saw the signs. I should have said something to Fletcher privately, warned him he was making a mistake. Instead, I stayed quiet. That's on me. You were respecting my privacy, senior instructor. Grace's voice was soft but steady. I don't blame you for that. Still, you deserved better than what happened today. Arthur paused. For what it's worth, I've served alongside SEALs, Delta operators, Rangers, all the high-speed units people talk about. But activity operators are different. You do the missions nobody admits exist, carry weights nobody sees, and get none of the recognition. The fact that you walked away from that life and chose to serve in logistics, supporting warriors instead of being one, he shook his head. That takes more courage than most operations I've run. The kill house courtyard fell silent. Then, without orders or coordination, the assembled SEALs and instructors came to attention as one. A moment of respect freely given for the warrior standing among them who'd chosen peace over violence. Grace's carefully maintained composure finally cracked. She covered her face with her hands briefly, shoulders shaking. Blake Mitchell moved to her side, a silent presence offering support. When she lowered her hands, tears streaked her face, but her voice was steady. Thank you, all of you, for the apologies, the respect, the understanding. She took a deep breath. I didn't want this attention, didn't want people knowing my background, but now you know, and I guess we all have to live with that. So, here's what I'm asking. Treat me like you did before today, like I'm just supply, just logistics, just another person doing her job, because that's who I want to be. Not the former operator with the classified background, just Grace. Veterans seeking to continue education had access to comprehensive GI Bill benefits covering tuition, housing, and books. Specialized programs helped former military personnel translate combat skills into civilian credentials. Tactical expertise became security consulting. Leadership experience turned into business management degrees. Legal services for veterans included disability claim assistance, record correction proceedings, and security clearance reinstatement. Online degree programs designed specifically for active duty, and veterans offered flexible scheduling compatible with PTSD treatment and therapy appointments. Career counselors who understood military culture could bridge the gap between service and civilian employment, helping warriors find purpose after hanging up the uniform. Fletcher nodded. We can do that, ma'am, but there's one more thing. He gestured toward the kill house. I set this facility to hard mode this morning. 6 simultaneous threats at impossible angles. It's a test we use for senior SEAL candidates who are being considered for advanced training. You ran it in the dark, under stress, without a weapon, and you executed it flawlessly. Master Chief, I want you to run it again, right now, with a weapon, properly. So, everyone here can see what an activity operator looks like in action. Fletcher's expression was serious. Not as a test, not as humiliation, as education. Show these warriors what real excellence looks like. Grace shook her head. I don't want to. I know you don't. But I'm asking anyway, because these SEALs need to see what they're aspiring toward. Need to understand that there are levels beyond SEAL training. Need to see what you can do when you're not hiding. Fletcher paused. And maybe you need to remember that you're still capable, still skilled. That 18 months of logistics work hasn't erased what you learned. Connor stepped forward. Grace, you don't have to do this. Nobody can make you. Grace looked at the assembled faces, saw genuine curiosity mixed with respect, saw warriors who wanted to learn, not mock, saw an opportunity to reshape the narrative, to control how her reveal would be remembered. All right, she said quietly. One run, clean course, then this is over. Fletcher handed her an M4 carbine and 3 loaded magazines. Standard rules. Engage all threats, avoid no-shoots, complete the course. We'll be watching from observation. Grace conducted functions check, loaded the weapon, charged it. Her movements were smooth, automatic, muscle memory returning despite 18 months away from operations. She looked at the kill house entrance, and for just a moment, something shifted in her bearing. The quiet logistics clerk disappeared, replaced by something harder, sharper, the operator she used to be, emerging from beneath the cover she'd maintained. She entered the building. The control room filled with observers. Connor, Fletcher, Sterling, all the instructors, senior SEAL candidates. Monitors showed Grace's movement through the first room. And she was beautiful. There was no other word for it. The way she moved through space, reading angles, processing threats, engaging targets with surgical precision. Every movement economical, every shot placed exactly where it needed to be. 2 rounds center mass, controlled pairs, threat assessment continuous, position always advantageous. She flowed through the course like water, like smoke, like something elemental that couldn't be stopped or contained. Door-breaching mechanics were textbook perfect. Room-clearing sequences demonstrated years of repetition. Her weapon was an extension of her body, no separation between thought and action, between stimulus and response. The kill house threw everything at her, multiple threats from impossible angles, hostage scenarios mixed with active shooters, lighting that shifted from bright to dark, sound effects designed to disorient, and Grace handled it all with calm competence that made it look easy, because for her, it was easy. This was what she'd done for 7 years. This was the job she'd mastered. This was who she used to be. 4 minutes later, she emerged from the kill house exit. Every target eliminated, 0 no-shoot casualties, perfect score. She cleared her weapon, removed the magazine, locked the bolt back. Handed the M4 back to Fletcher without a word. Her face was carefully blank again, the operator mask back in place. The observation room erupted in spontaneous applause. Not mocking, not sarcastic, genuine appreciation from warriors who recognized excellence when they witnessed it. Grace endured the attention for exactly 30 seconds. Then she turned and walked away, heading back toward the supply warehouse with quick, determined strides. Connor followed, leaving the celebrating crowd behind. He caught up with her at the warehouse entrance. Grace, wait. She stopped, but didn't turn around. I need to be alone, sir. I know, just... That was incredible. What you did back there. You showed them what real skill looks like. I showed them a person who can't let go of who she used to be. Grace's voice was thick with emotion. I told myself I'd moved on, built a new life, but the second I picked up that rifle, everything came back. The training, the missions, the muscle memory, it all came back like I'd never left. That doesn't mean, it means I'm lying to myself, Lieutenant, lying about being done with that life. Because if I was really done, running that course wouldn't have felt so natural, so right, so much like coming home. She finally turned to face him, tears streaming freely now. I loved it, sir. Loved being back in action, even for 4 minutes. And that terrifies me, because that job cost me everything. My friends, my mental health, my ability to trust. And despite all that, some part of me still wants it back. Connor had no easy answers for that kind of pain. No words that could resolve the war Grace was fighting with herself. So he just stood there, bearing witness to her struggle. "What do I do?" Grace asked quietly. "How do I move forward when part of me wants to go back?" "You keep choosing the life you want," Connor said. "Every day, every moment. You keep choosing peace over violence, support over operations, healing over service. And on the days when that choice is hard, you remember why you made it. Remember Hannah and your other teammate. Remember what that life cost. And you choose differently." Grace nodded slowly. "I'm going to need time to process today, to figure out what comes next. Take what you need. Commander Sterling already said your job is secure. And if anyone bothers you about this, they answer to him." "Thank you, sir." Grace wiped her eyes. "For everything. For trying to protect me. For understanding. For not making this harder than it already is." Connor left her there, standing alone in the warehouse doorway, silhouetted against the late afternoon sun. A warrior caught between two lives, trying to find peace in the space between who she was and who she wanted to become. The following week passed in strange suspension. Word of Grace's background spread throughout Naval Special Warfare Command exactly as she'd predicted. But Sterling's protection held. Nobody openly tested her, nobody demanded details of her service, nobody treated her like a curiosity to be examined. Instead, something unexpected happened: respect. SEALs nodded to her in passing. Instructors asked her opinion on training protocols. Support personnel stopped seeing her as just another clerk. She'd become something rare, a warrior who'd earned her place at the highest levels and chosen to walk away with her honor intact. Grace accepted the attention with quiet grace, neither encouraging nor discouraging it. She did her job, filed her reports, maintained the same steady professionalism that had characterized her 18 months of service. But Connor could see the cost, saw how she held herself more carefully now, always aware of being watched, saw how she avoided the range when possible, uncomfortable with the memories the space evoked, saw how she'd started leaving base immediately after her shift ended, no longer lingering for informal conversations with Blake or other supply personnel. The reveal had changed her, not broken her, but wounded her in ways that would take time to heal. On Friday afternoon, 9 days after the confrontation that had upended her life, Connor found Grace in the warehouse conducting end-of-week inventory. She looked tired, dark circles under her eyes suggesting sleep had been elusive. "Grace, Commander Sterling asked me to give you something." Connor handed her a sealed envelope marked with official JSOC insignia. "He said you'd know what it is." Grace opened the envelope, read the single page inside. Her expression didn't change, but her hands tightened on the paper. "They're withdrawing the request for my return. ISA has officially acknowledged my medical leave status and confirmed I won't be contacted for operational duties unless I initiate contact first. That's good news, right? It's closure." Grace folded the letter carefully. "It's them letting me go, really letting go, not just temporarily stepping back. It means they've accepted I'm not coming back." "How do you feel about that?" Grace was quiet for a long moment. "Relieved, and sad, and guilty for feeling relieved. It's complicated. Most important things are," Connor paused. "Sterling also wanted me to ask again about the consulting position, voluntary tactical advisory role, help design better training without operational responsibility. I'm still thinking about it. Take your time. The offer stands indefinitely." Connor turned to leave, then stopped. "Grace, you asked me last week how to move forward. I've been thinking about that, and I think the answer is you already are. Every day you come to work, do your job, maintain your professionalism despite everyone knowing your background. Every day you choose this life over your old one. That's moving forward. It's not dramatic. It's not a single moment of decision. It's just showing up and making the choice again and again." Grace managed a small smile. "Thank you, Lieutenant. That actually helps." Connor departed, leaving Grace alone in the warehouse. She returned to her inventory counting, finding comfort in the routine. The familiar rhythm of checking serial numbers, updating databases, ensuring everything was accounted for and properly stored. She was halfway through a crate of medical supplies when she heard footsteps behind her. Blake Mitchell appeared, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this." He handed her one. "You've been working through lunch again." "Just trying to stay caught up." Grace accepted the coffee gratefully. "Thanks, Blake." "So," Blake leaned against the supply rack, studying her face. We've worked together 18 months, shared hundreds of shifts, and I never knew you were—" He gestured vaguely. "You know, that. I wasn't hiding it from you specifically. I was hiding it from everyone. I know, but still feels weird. Like I didn't really know the person I was working beside." Blake took a sip of coffee. "Are we good? You and me? Because if the friendship was based on you pretending to be someone you're not—" "Blake, I wasn't pretending." Grace's voice was firm. "Everything you knew about me was real. I love organizing supply chains. I genuinely enjoy inventory management. I find satisfaction in making sure warriors have what they need. That wasn't cover or pretense. That was me choosing activities that brought peace instead of chaos. And the other part, the classified operator part, that's still me too, just a version I'm trying to move away from." Grace set down her coffee. I know it's confusing. Hell, it's confusing for me. But you're my friend, Blake. That hasn't changed, won't change. Unless you don't want— Of course I still want to be friends." Blake's response was immediate. "Just needed to make sure you felt the same, that you weren't going to disappear now that your cover's blown." "I'm not disappearing. I'm exactly where I want to be," Grace smiled, counting bullets with the best supply NCO in the Navy. They worked together in comfortable silence for the next hour, falling back into familiar patterns. The revelation hadn't destroyed their friendship. If anything, it had strengthened it by removing the secrets that had stood between them. As the afternoon wore on, Grace felt something loosening in her chest. The anxiety that had gripped her since the confrontation finally easing. Maybe Connor was right. Maybe moving forward wasn't about dramatic gestures or definitive breaks. Maybe it was just about showing up every day and making the choice to keep building the life she wanted. Her phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. "This is Arthur Walsh. Group of us getting together tomorrow for barbecue at the beach. Instructors, some SEAL candidates, few support personnel, no shop talk, no testing, just people. You should come. Blake has details." Grace showed the message to Blake, who grinned. "Already got the invite. Was going to ask if you wanted to go. Seems like Arthur's trying to normalize things, make you part of the community instead of the base legend everyone whispers about. I don't know if I'm ready for social events." "Probably not, but that's exactly why you should go." Blake's expression turned serious. "Grace, you've spent 18 months keeping everyone at arm's length, building walls so nobody could ask questions. Those walls are gone now. Might as well try actually connecting with people." Grace considered that. The idea was terrifying. Stepping out of her carefully controlled routine, exposing herself to casual questions and inevitable curiosity. But Blake had a point. She couldn't hide forever. And if she was going to stay in San Diego, stay in this assignment, she needed to find a way to be part of the community without losing herself in the process. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll go, but if anyone asks about missions, you tell them it's classified and change the subject. And if they don't respect that, we leave." Blake smiled. "Deal?" "Deal." The barbecue the next day was easier than Grace expected. Arthur had apparently sent firm instructions. Grace's background was acknowledged but not discussed. No questions about operations, no testing or challenges, just a gathering of warriors and support personnel enjoying a rare day off. Grace spent most of the afternoon in quiet conversation with Lily Bennett, the corpsman who had been one of the few sympathetic voices during the confrontation. Lily understood complicated relationships with military service. Her own brother had served in Afghanistan and come home changed. She didn't pry, didn't push, just offered companionship without demands. As sunset painted the sky in oranges and purples, Liam Foster approached hesitantly. The young SEAL trainee who'd been inspired by Grace's story looked nervous. "Ma'am, can I ask you something?" "If it's not about specific operations, sure. It's about transition, about after, when you're done with the high-speed life." Liam sat down in the sand beside her. "I'm 2 years into my SEAL career, and already I'm wondering how long I can do this. The training is intense, the deployments are brutal, and I look at guys who've been doing it for 10, 15 years, and I see the wear, the injuries, the divorces, the PTSD, and I wonder, is there life after?" Grace understood the question beneath the question. Liam wasn't asking about retirement benefits or post-service career options. He was asking if warriors could become people again, if you could walk away from the fight without losing yourself. "There's life after," Grace said quietly. "But it's different than you expect. You don't stop being a warrior just because you stop fighting. The training never leaves. The instincts never fade. You'll always be the person who ran toward danger while others ran away. But you can choose different battles, quieter battles. The fight to heal, the fight to build something instead of destroying, the fight to be present in peaceful moments without waiting for violence to erupt. Does it get easier? Some days it's hard. Some days you wake up and your body wants to be back in combat gear, wants the adrenaline and clarity that comes from operational work. And you have to choose differently, choose the harder path of staying present, staying peaceful, staying human. Grace looked at Liam directly. But you can do it, and it's worth it. Even on the hard days, it's worth it. Liam nodded slowly. Thank you, ma'am. That helps. He returned to the group of SEAL candidates, leaving Grace alone with her thoughts as darkness settled over the beach. The barbecue was winding down, people packing up gear and saying goodbyes. Grace helped clean up, finding comfort in the simple task of collecting trash and folding chairs. As she was loading supplies into Blake's truck, Connor approached. Grace, moment of your time? They walked down the beach away from the group. Waves crashed against the shore, providing white noise privacy. Commander Sterling has gotten 3 requests this week from other commands asking about you, Connor said without preamble. 2 want you for consulting positions, similar to what Sterling offered. 1 is from DevGru. They want your input on advanced surveillance techniques for hostage rescue scenarios. I'm not interested. I told them that, but the requests keep coming. Your reputation preceded your reveal. Apparently you're something of a legend in certain circles. Now that your current assignment is known, people want access to your expertise. Grace stopped walking. Lieutenant, I need you to understand something. I didn't leave the activity because I got tired of the work. I didn't burn out or lose my edge. I left because I couldn't trust myself anymore. Because after Hannah and my other teammate died, I started making decisions based on revenge instead of mission objectives. Started taking risks that put others in danger because part of me wanted to join my teammates. I left before I got anyone else killed. Connor hadn't known that. Sterling's briefing had mentioned survivor's guilt and PTSD, but not operational compromises. That's serious, Grace. That's why I'm in logistics, why I count supplies instead of clearing rooms, because I don't trust the operator I used to be. And until I heal enough to trust myself again, I have no business advising anyone on tactical operations. Have you talked to anyone about this? Therapist? Counselor? Grace nodded. Weekly sessions since I transferred here. It helps. Slowly. But it's a long process. Then take your time. I'll keep telling these commands you're unavailable. And if Sterling asks again about consulting, tell him I'm not ready. Maybe someday, but not yet. They walked back to the group in comfortable silence. The barbecue had fully concluded now, vehicles departing in small clusters. Grace helped Blake finish loading his truck, then climbed into the passenger seat for the ride back to base housing. That looked intense, Blake commented, starting the engine. Everything okay? People want things from me. Expertise, knowledge, validation. Grace stared out the window at the dark ocean. I just want to be left alone to heal. Then that's what you tell them. Anyone who doesn't respect that isn't worth your time. Simple advice. But profound in its directness. Grace had spent so long trying to manage everyone else's perceptions and expectations that she'd forgotten she could simply say no, could set boundaries and enforce them, could choose her own path regardless of what others thought she should do. Monday morning brought a return to routine. Grace arrived at the warehouse at 0700 hours, coffee in hand, ready to tackle the week's supply requisitions. Blake was already there, organizing incoming shipments. "Morning," he called. "Got something interesting for you." Grace approached his workstation. A small package sat on the desk, wrapped in plain brown paper, her name written in precise block letters on the front. No return address, no postmark. "This was here when I arrived. Must have been delivered overnight." Blake eyed the package suspiciously. "You expecting anything?" Grace carefully opened the package. Inside was a single item, a challenge coin. Not JSOC standard, not Navy standard. Something specific. The face of the coin bore the Issei insignia, the lightning bolts and Latin motto. The reverse side was engraved with 3 names, Hannah, Marcus, Grace, and below them, a date, the date of their last mission, the date Hannah and Marcus died. Grace's hands shook as she turned the coin over and over. Someone from the activity had sent this, someone who knew about her team, someone who wanted her to remember. A small card fell from the package. They would be proud of your choice. The W. Willow, her ISA handler, the voice on encrypted lines. The person who had managed her operations and extracted her when missions went wrong. The person who had supported her request for medical leave and helped arrange her transfer to San Diego. Grace sank into a desk chair, emotions overwhelming her. This wasn't a recall, wasn't manipulation. It was acknowledgement. Recognition that walking away from the activity to pursue healing required as much courage as staying. That honoring her teammates' memory by choosing to live, really live, was its own form of service. Grace? Blake's voice was worried. What is it? She showed him the coin and card. Blake read quickly, then pulled up a chair beside her. That's a good thing, right? Your old commander saying they support your choice? It's closure, Grace's voice cracked. Real closure. Not ISA withdrawing their request to recall me. This is them saying I did the right thing, that Hannah and Marcus would understand, would approve. Tears started flowing, months of suppressed grief finally finding release. I needed that. Needed to know I wasn't betraying them by walking away. Blake wrapped an arm around her shoulders, offering silent comfort as Grace cried. The warehouse was private enough that nobody would see, secure enough that she could let the walls down without fear. And Blake was friend enough not to ask questions, just to be present. After several minutes, Grace composed herself. Sorry, that was necessary, Blake interrupted firmly. You've been holding that in since your confrontation with Fletcher. Probably longer. You're allowed to have feelings about losing your teammates. Grace nodded, carefully placing the challenge coin in her pocket. She'd find a proper place for it later, somewhere she could see it daily. Let it remind her why she'd made this choice. The warehouse door opened. Lieutenant Commander Sterling entered, expression serious. Grace, Connor, my office. Now. Grace exchanged glances with Blake, then followed Sterling. Connor was already in the office when they arrived, along with Arthur Walsh and Captain Pierce. Close the door, Sterling ordered. Grace's anxiety spiked. This felt like the prelude to bad news. Sterling waited until everyone was seated, then said, Yesterday, a journalist contacted Public Affairs asking about rumors of a classified special operations member working in logistics at this facility. They'd heard stories about a demonstration at the Kill House, about confrontation with training personnel, about someone with skills far beyond their current role. Grace's stomach dropped. Sir, I've shut it down, for now. Told Public Affairs no comment, classified personnel matters, standard deflection. But this isn't going away, Grace. Your story has gotten out beyond base boundaries, and journalists don't give up on stories this compelling. What do I do? Nothing. Say nothing. If anyone contacts you directly, refer them to Public Affairs. Don't confirm or deny anything about your service record. Sterling's expression softened slightly. But I want you prepared. There may be attention, questions, speculation. Your quiet life here just got more complicated. Grace nodded numbly. First the reveal within the base, then the gossip through Special Operations Command. Now potentially public attention. Every layer of protection stripped away, every wall torn down, until there was nowhere left to hide. I'm sorry, Grace, Sterling said quietly. I know this isn't what you wanted. It's not your fault, sir. Fletcher's confrontation started this cascade. Everything since has just been consequences playing out. Still, you deserve better. Sterling pulled out a folder. One more thing. This came through official channels this morning. Transfer orders, if you want them. Grace opened the folder. Orders reassigning her to Fleet Logistics Command in Norfolk, Virginia, 3,000 miles from San Diego, from the base where everyone knew her story, from the attention that was about to descend. It's a lateral move, Sterling explained. Same rank, same pay, same job description, but it's a fresh start. Nobody there knows about your ISA background. You could rebuild your quiet life without the spotlight. Grace stared at the orders, escape offered on official letterhead, the chance to run before the attention became unbearable, before journalists started digging, before her story became public spectacle. Can I think about it? She asked quietly. You've got 72 hours. After that, the orders expire, and this opportunity closes. Sterling stood. Whatever you decide, Grace, we'll support you. You've earned that much. The meeting concluded. Grace walked back to the warehouse in a daze, transfer orders clutched in her hand. Blake took one look at her face and knew something major had shifted. What happened? Grace showed him the orders. They're offering me a way out. Transfer to Virginia before the story goes public. Fresh start where nobody knows my background. Are you going to take it? I don't know. Grace sat down heavily. Part of me wants to run, wants to escape before this gets worse. But another part, she trailed off. Another part? Another part is tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of building walls and maintaining covers and pretending to be less than I am. Grace looked at Blake directly. What if instead of running from the attention, I used my story to help other veterans understand that walking away from combat isn't weakness, that choosing healing over service is valid, that warriors can become people again? Blake smiled slowly. That's a hell of a reframe, or a terrible idea that I'll regret. Grace laughed, slightly hysterical. I have no idea what I'm doing, Blake. I'm making this up as I go. That's called living, Grace. Nobody has it figured out. We're all just choosing what feels right and hoping it works out. Grace spent the next 72 hours in careful contemplation. She talked to Connor, to Arthur, to Lily, to Blake. She called her therapist for an emergency session. She sat alone on the beach at sunset and tried to hear Hannah's voice in the waves, asking what her fallen teammate would advise. And slowly, clarity emerged. On Thursday morning, Grace walked into Sterling's office and placed the transfer orders on his desk. I'm staying, sir. San Diego is my home now. Whatever attention comes, whatever questions get asked, I'll face them here. Sterling studied her face. You're sure? Once you turn down these orders, there won't be another easy escape route. I'm sure. I'm done running from who I used to be. Time to integrate both versions of myself, the operator and the supply clerk, and figure out who Grace Thornton actually is when she stops hiding. All right then. Sterling tore up the transfer orders. Welcome home, Grace. That evening, Grace sat in her small base housing apartment, the challenge coin from Willow resting on the table beside her. Her phone buzzed. Encrypted message request through secure app. She accepted. Willow's voice came through, familiar after years of operational communications. Heard you turned down the transfer. That took courage. Or stupidity. Jury's still out. Grace smiled despite herself. Thank you for the coin, for the message. It meant everything. Hannah and Marcus chose you as team leader because you made hard calls. The call to leave was one of the hardest, but it was right. Willow paused. Grace, I'm not asking you to come back. Not now. Maybe not ever. But I want you to know, if you ever heal enough to trust yourself again, the activity would welcome you home. I appreciate that. But I think my home is here now, counting supplies, supporting warriors, living quietly. Grace picked up the challenge coin, feeling its weight. This is where I'm supposed to be. Then that's where you'll be. Take care of yourself, Grace. You earn this peace. The connection ended. Grace sat in the gathering darkness of her apartment, feeling something settle in her chest. Not quite healing, not yet, but the beginning of acceptance. The first steps toward integration. Her phone rang again. Different number. Blake's voice. Turn on the news, Channel 7, now. Grace grabbed the remote, switched on her television. Local news was running a story. Secret Special Operations Warrior. Working among us, the story nobody's talking about. Her heart sank. The journalist had found another angle, published despite public affairs stonewalling. The story was out. But as Grace watched, something unexpected happened. The piece wasn't sensationalized, wasn't exploitative. Instead, it focused on veterans transitioning from combat to civilian life. Used Grace's story, unnamed, details obscured, to illustrate how warriors can choose healing without shame. How choosing peace is its own form of courage. The segment ended with a quote from an unnamed source. Real strength isn't just about what you can do in combat. It's about knowing when to walk away, knowing when to choose life over service. That takes courage most warriors never develop. Grace recognized the phrasing. Arthur Walsh had spoken to the journalist, had shaped the narrative towards something constructive instead of sensational. Her phone exploded with messages. Blake, Connor, Sterling, Lily, even Fletcher, all checking in, making sure she was okay, offering support. And Grace realized something profound. She wasn't alone anymore. Wasn't carrying this weight by herself. She had a community now, people who knew her story and chose to stand beside her, chose to protect her, support her, help her navigate this complicated transition from warrior to person. I'm okay, she typed in response to the messages. Better than okay, I'm home. The following weeks brought attention, questions, even a few interview requests that Grace politely declined, but the initial feared media frenzy never materialized. Arthur's shaping of the narrative had worked. Grace became a symbol of healthy transition instead of a curiosity to be examined. Life found new rhythms. Grace maintained her logistics work while accepting Sterling's consulting offer on a limited basis, one afternoon per week helping review training protocols. She started attending the weekly barbecues, slowly building friendships beyond Blake. She continued therapy, working through the grief and guilt that had driven her from the activity. And one evening, 3 months after the confrontation that had changed everything, Grace found herself back at the range, not for training, not for testing, just standing near the firing line as sunset painted the sky in brilliant colors. Master Chief Fletcher found her there. He'd kept his distance since the incident, giving Grace space to heal. Now he approached cautiously. "Ma'am, Master Chief, you can call me Grace. We've been through too much for formalities." Fletcher managed a small smile. "Grace, then, I've been wanting to say thank you." "For what?" "For how you handled everything. You could have filed complaints, could have destroyed my career, could have made my life miserable. Instead, you showed grace, ironic given your name, and let me learn from my mistakes without destroying me in the process. Everyone deserves a chance to grow, Master Chief. You weren't trying to hurt me, you just didn't understand what you were dealing with." Grace watched the sun sink toward the horizon. "We're good. Really. I'm glad." Fletcher hesitated. "There's one more thing. I've been asked to help develop a new training program. Focus on appropriate conduct toward all personnel, regardless of background or role. They want someone who's made mistakes to teach others how to avoid them. Would you be willing to consult? Help design scenarios that illustrate proper respect?" Grace considered. It would mean engaging more deeply with the training community, would mean using her experience to educate instead of hide, would mean stepping further from her carefully maintained quiet life. But it would also mean ensuring what happened to her didn't happen to others, would mean turning her painful experience into something constructive, would mean honoring Hannah and Marcus by making the military community better. "I'll do it," she said, "on one condition. We design this program together. Your perspective as someone who made mistakes, my perspective as someone who experienced them. We make this real, raw, no sugarcoating. Deal." Fletcher extended his hand. Grace shook it, feeling another piece of her shattered life clicking back into place. As darkness fell over the range, Grace stayed a while longer, watching stars emerge, listening to the distant sounds of the base settling into evening routine, feeling something she hadn't felt in 18 months. Not peace, not yet, but the possibility of peace. The promise that healing was happening, slowly but steadily. Her phone buzzed one final time. Encrypted satellite phone in her apartment, the one Isay had provided months ago, the one she'd ignored. Grace pulled out her regular phone, called Sterling. "Sir, I need to report something. I've received communication equipment from my previous unit. Secure satellite phone. I've been ignoring it, but I think I should turn it in. Let someone else handle whatever requests might come through." Sterling was quiet for a moment. "Grace, that phone is yours to keep or surrender. But before you decide, ask yourself, does having it available give you anxiety, or does it give you options?" Grace hadn't considered that perspective. The phone represented a connection to her old life, but it also represented choice, the ability to say yes if she wanted, no if she didn't, agency instead of avoidance. "I'll keep it," she decided, "but I'm not checking it. It stays in a drawer. If Isa needs me badly enough, they'll find another way to reach out." "Sounds like a healthy boundary. Good night, Grace." Grace walked back to her apartment under star-filled sky, feeling lighter than she had in months. The confrontation with Fletcher had torn down every wall she'd built, had exposed secrets she'd wanted kept hidden, had forced her to face parts of herself she'd been avoiding. But it had also given her something unexpected: community, connection, the beginning of genuine integration between her warrior past and her peaceful present. She was Grace Thornton, former ISA case officer, current logistics specialist, survivor, friend, consultant, person. All of those identities held together in complicated balance. No longer hiding, no longer running, just living, one day at a time, making choices that felt right and accepting consequences as they came. And for the first time since Hannah and Marcus died, that felt like enough. Grace entered her apartment, placed the challenge coin on her nightstand where she'd see it every morning. A reminder of who she'd been, who she'd lost, and who she was choosing to become. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new questions, new opportunities to choose her path. But tonight, Grace was home, really home. Not hiding in San Diego, not waiting for recall, not punishing herself with meaningless routine. Home in the truest sense, surrounded by people who knew her story and chose to stand beside her anyway. Doing work that mattered, building a life worth living. The satellite phone stayed silent in its drawer, and that silence was its own kind of peace. Grace Thornton, warrior in person, slept better that night than she had in 18 months, because she'd finally learned the hardest lesson. The activity had never taught her. Sometimes the bravest thing a warrior can do is choose to stop fighting, and in that choice find themselves again.